Hello everyone! For today's card I'm going to be starting with some white embossing paste, and I'm going to color this with two different distress inks. So I have the Mermaid Lagoon and the Cracked Pistachio. Both of those are new for 2015. And I'm going to use my palette knife and just put a little bit of white embossing paste right next to each one, and you don't need very much at all. Just a little bit will go a long way on your card. You just want to make sure that you have enough though, because if you try to mix the color again, you might not get the exact same shade. So I'm just taking my palette knife and mixing the colors together, and you want to make sure that all of the ink is mixed in there and that there's no more white left. So I'll do the same thing with my Cracked Pistachio, and that one is quite a bit lighter than the blue color. But when I put this on my paper, I am going to kind of create like an ombre effect, but only with two colors. So I'm using the Dot Fade stencil from Tim Holtz, and my piece of cardstock is adhered down to my nonstick craft sheet so that it won't move underneath, and then I just place my stencil down with some washi tape. And I'll start by picking up the Cracked Pistachio colored embossing paste, and I'm putting that on the bottom half. And then I'll go ahead and take my Mermaid Lagoon and put that on the top half. And you want to make sure that they do overlap a little bit, because that's going to create the ombre effect, and then it won't just look like two separate colors. So you do want to overlap them and kind of mix the middle two colors together. So you'll see me adding both of those back in. So I went back with some of the Cracked Pistachio and added that over the Mermaid Lagoon. It just helps kind of blend them together. And then I decided to actually color the entire piece of paper. I was only going to do like the middle part, but since I had enough embossing paste, I just decided to cover the whole thing. And if you do have a lot of embossing paste left over, you can store it in an airtight container, and then it will last for quite a while. And that way you don't waste it, and you can use that color on another project. So then I'm going to let that dry completely, and I'm going to take my stamp. I have the I Really Like You from Fawn, and I'm going to stamp the little wheel and the hamster with my Tuxedo Black Memento ink, and I'm stamping that on a piece of Coordinations 110-pound cardstock. And then I went ahead and heated those with my heat tool just to make sure that it was completely dried before I started coloring those in with my Copic markers. And the embossing paste piece, I should mention, you want to let it dry completely, but while I was creating the rest of my card, it was dry in that time, so it doesn't take very long at all to dry. But I'm just going to color in these images. Alright, so after I colored those in, I went ahead and fussy cut them out. Next, I'm going to take the stitched party banner die from Fawn and cut that circle out of a piece of vellum. And this is going to go right behind my hamster and the wheel. So I'll just place that down with some washi tape so that it doesn't move while I run it through my Cuttlebug. Alright, so then I can go ahead and remove that from the die. And then I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. I have a piece of black cardstock. It measures a ½ inch, and then I'm going to cut it down so it can be however long you want it to be. But I'm going to stamp that with some Versamark ink. And I'm going to heat and emboss this with some Hero Arts white embossing powder. And I just stamped it in the middle because, like I said, I am going to cut it down, so I wasn't sure which side I was going to use. So tap off the excess, and then I can go ahead and heat that with my heat tool. So now I can go ahead and assemble my card. So I'm taking that embossing paste piece and just adhering it with some Scotch ATG adhesive. And that's going to go right in the middle of my white A2 size card base. And then I'm going to place my vellum down with the Tim Holtz Tiny Attacher. And I should have done this before I adhered that embossing paste piece down because the staples will end up on the inside of the card, but that doesn't really bother me much. I think it just kind of adds to the handmade card. But if you don't like it, just staple that down before you adhere the embossing paste piece down. So then I'll adhere my wheel down with some 3D foam squares. And this set does have a die that cuts the middle part of that wheel out, but it really doesn't bother me to have it white. I kind of like it because then it's going to hide the staples behind that, and it's easier to adhere the little hamster right into the wheel. So I am going to place the sentiment behind that wheel, so I'll go ahead and adhere that down first. I'm cutting a fishtail banner in one of the sides. I'll put some adhesive on the back and then kind of place that with the little wheel just so that it's even on there. I had to trim off a little bit of the other side just so that it didn't stick out behind it. Alright, so I'm adhering that down first just to make sure that it's even on the card and not crooked. And then placing the wheel over it, and then I'm taking the small 3D foam squares from Best Creation and putting 2 on the back of the hamster, and then that one will be popped up a little bit as well. And then to the wheel, I'm going to add some Wink of Stella glitter just so that it's really sparkly. I was going to add some glossy accents, but I don't have one of those fine tips on the end, so it would be really difficult to try to get my bottle to kind of stay in those lines. But if you have one of those fine tip applicators, that would be really cool to add glossy accents to that as well. And then I'm going to add a few sequins, just 3 of them on there, so I'll have 2 large and then 1 of the small. And all of the supplies that I used on this card will be linked below if you are interested in any of them. And then I can go ahead and adhere those into place with my Tombow Mono Multi Glue. You could also use glossy accents or the multi-matte medium to adhere those into place. And then that is my finished card for today. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I'll see you guys back here next time.